Welcome to our deep dive into the Schopenhauer Cure, where we explore that fascinating meeting point between philosophy and psychotherapy. You know, that tension between reason and emotion, life and death, meaning and despair. Today's episode is all about the beginning of this journey, a chapter we're calling Julius Meets Death. So let's meet our main character, Dr. Julius Hertzfeld. Picture this. He's a seasoned psychotherapist. His whole life, his entire career, has been about helping other people untangle the messy knots in their minds. But you have to wonder, what happens when the healer himself gets a wound that no amount of therapy can fix? Well, that's exactly where our story kicks off. Julius, the guy who's the rock for everyone else, the one who guides them through their darkest times, is suddenly told he has just 1 year to live. Just like that. It's a piece of news that doesn't just change things, it shatters everything. And it leaves him with this one massive question. After a lifetime spent healing others, is it even possible for him to heal himself?
Okay, so to really get the impact of this diagnosis, like the sheer seismic shock of it, we need to understand the world that's about to be blown apart. Let's take a look at the very stable, very ordered life that Dr. Julius Hertzfeld had built for himself. You know, his life was all about structure. It had this predictable rhythm to it, scheduling sessions, listening deeply, constantly absorbing and reflecting the pain of other people. It wasn't just his job, it was his entire identity. The whole thing was built on this steady, purposeful routine of healing minds. And that world, that routine, it felt so permanent, right? So solid. But really, it was all an illusion that's about to come crashing down thanks to one single brutal fact.
1. That's it. Just 1 year. Can you imagine? That's the sentence. In that single moment, every long-term plan, every schedule, every single thing he just assumed about his future, it all just evaporates. It all collapses into this one tiny, terrifying number. The book calls it a moment of rupture, and that's exactly what it is. The illusion of having all the time in the world, it just shatters. That routine that was his entire life's meaning, suddenly it feels so fragile, kind of absurd even. And this is the core of it, really. Here's a man who has spent his entire life helping people work through their issues. But now he's up against the one thing that no therapy, no amount of talking, no psychological breakthrough can ever cure. He's facing his own mortality, head on. And when you're faced with something that big, the really big questions just start bubbling to the surface, right? He's forced to ask himself, what have I actually done with my life? Whose soul have I really touched? Once you strip away that professional identity of the healer, who is he really? And that's what starts to eat at him. So what does he do? Does he just curl up in despair? Nope. Instead, he starts this desperate search for some kind of meaning. And interestingly, he doesn't look forward, he looks back. He decides to confront a ghost from his past, a professional failure that's been nagging at him for years. And this is where the book's big philosophical idea drops in, with a quote from Arthur Schopenhauer. The thinking here is pretty radical. It suggests that thinking about death isn't this horrible, tragic thing. It's actually an awakening. It's the one thing that strips away all the nonsense and forces you to see what's actually important. So you can kind of see his thought process here. It's a pretty clear path. First, he has to face his own mortality. That's step 1. That, in turn, kicks off this deep need to find some kind of meaning or resolution. And where does that lead him? Right back to one specific memory, the patient he could never help, his biggest failure. Yeah, he keeps thinking about this one patient from way back, a guy named Philip Slate. He was just unreachable, cold, detached, and Julius, well, he gave up on him. He literally wrote him off as untreatable. Now, with his own time running out, it feels like this loose end, this piece of his own unfinished business is staring him right in the face. So Julius gets this idea. He feels this urgency. He has to find Philip. He needs to revisit that failure. But when he finally manages to track him down after all these years, what he finds is, well, it's not at all what he expected. It's a total shock. Because the Philip he meets now is a completely different person. He's not that cold, walled-off guy anymore. In fact, Philip claims he's been cured, totally transformed. But here's the kicker. It wasn't another therapist who did it. Nope. Philip says his cure came from philosophy.
specifically from diving deep into the work of Arthur Schopenhauer. And that right there is the Schopenhauer Cure. This is the idea that's going to drive the whole conflict of the novel.
So now you've got these two totally different paths, these two opposing worldviews set on a collision course. You've got Julius, the therapist who is dying, trying to use connection and wisdom to face death. And then you have Philip, the patient, who says he's been reborn, who believes the only way to master life is to basically detach from it.
And the philosophy that's sitting right in the middle of this conflict, it's Schopenhauer's. And let's be real, it's pretty dark. It's this idea that life is just suffering, plain and simple, that all our desires are basically an illusion that just leads to more pain. And the only way to find any kind of peace is to just give it all up, renounce it. So the book uses Julius's story to do something really clever. It's not just about him. It's about turning that question back on us, the readers. And it really makes you think. So I'm going to leave you with that same question, the one Julius is wrestling with. If you found out you had 1 year left, what's the one conversation you would have to revisit? What's that loose end you'd need to tie up? And who would you try to heal? Maybe even yourself.